A hand presses against limestone 40,000 years ago and leaves nothing behind but an outline in ochre. We call the species that made it primitive. We call ourselves the ones who survived. But somewhere in that gap between those two words, there is a mystery no textbook has fully solved. Most people believe Neanderthals were simply outsmarted. Weaker brains, clumsier tools, a slower, dimmer version of us, erased by a superior competitor. That story is comforting. It is also, according to the evidence, almost certainly wrong. Neanderthal brains were, on average, larger than ours. They controlled fire, treated wounds, buried their dead, and survived in Ice Age Europe for over 300,000 years, a span of time that dwarfs the entire history of Homo sapiens civilization. If intelligence alone decided survival, they should still be here. So something else happened, and the deeper researchers dig, the stranger the answer becomes. Picture a Neanderthal band in the Zagros Mountains, 60,000 years ago, watching smoke rise from a valley that isn't theirs. A new kind of human has arrived. Thinner, lighter, less powerful in raw muscle, and yet, within 20,000 years, that smoke will be the only kind left burning. The old explanation was violence, a war our ancestors won because we were better killers. But the archaeological record tells a quieter, more unsettling story. There is almost no evidence of large-scale conflict between the two species. What there is, instead, is evidence of contact, of proximity, of something far more intimate than war. Every non-African human alive today carries Neanderthal DNA, not as a historical footnote, as a living presence, sitting inside your own cells right now, shaping your immune system, your skin, even how you experience certain kinds of pain. We did not simply replace them, we absorbed them. Which means the question was never really, why did they go extinct? The question is, at what point does a species stop existing and start becoming diluted into another? That reframing changes everything. And it should unsettle you. Researchers studying Neanderthal genomes in 2010 found something they didn't expect. The interbreeding wasn't a single event. It happened repeatedly, in different regions, at different times. Two populations overlapping again and again across tens of thousands of years, in landscapes buried under ice. But if we were mixing with them, why did their genetic and cultural signature fade so completely? Here, the story turns darker. Neanderthal populations, even at their peak, were small, likely never more than a few tens of thousands of individuals scattered across an entire continent. Small populations are fragile in ways that have nothing to do with intelligence. A single harsh winter, a single disrupted hunting season, and a group that took 100,000 years to build can lose a generation it will never recover. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, were arriving in larger, more interconnected groups, with trade networks stretching hundreds of miles. If a Neanderthal band lost its toolmakers to famine, the knowledge died with them. If a Sapiens band lost its toolmakers, the network replaced them. It wasn't a battle of brains. It was a battle of numbers and networks and margins so thin they are almost invisible in the fossil record, and utterly decisive in the outcome. Then the climate turned against them. Around 45,000 years ago, Europe entered a period of violent climatic instability. Temperatures swinging by degrees within single human lifetimes, ecosystems collapsing and reforming faster than large mammals could adapt. Neanderthals were superbly built for a world of cold, stable tundra. Their bodies were engineered for raw strength, for close-range hunting of massive Ice Age herbivores. But evolution optimizes for the world that existed yesterday, not the one arriving tomorrow. As the climate fractured, So did the herds Neanderthals depended on. Homo sapiens, arriving from a continent that had forced them to adapt to instability for tens of thousands of years already, carried something Neanderthals didn't need until it was too late: behavioral flexibility, different tools for different problems, different strategies for different prey, the capacity to become someone else when the old way stopped working. There's a discomforting thought hiding inside this. Extinction, in this telling, isn't about strength or intelligence at all. It's about which kind of mind can tolerate the collapse of everything it once knew how to predict. Ask yourself what would happen to you, to everything you've built your competence on, if the rules changed faster than you could relearn them. Some researchers go further still, into territory that borders on the philosophical. They point to subtle differences in social scale, evidence that sapiens groups formed wider, looser networks of allies across greater distances, exchanging not just genes but ideas, techniques, warnings. Neanderthal groups, by contrast, appear more insular, more self-contained, more isolated from each other. In a stable world, isolation is safety. In a collapsing one, isolation is a death sentence with a very long fuse. It is tempting to see this as a story about a better species winning. But look closer, and it becomes a story about connection outlasting isolation, flexibility outlasting strength, and networks outlasting individuals. A pattern that has repeated itself long before humans existed, and one that has never stopped repeating since. Because here is the uncomfortable truth underneath all of it. Extinction rarely looks like defeat. It looks like a slow forgetting, a shrinking radius, fewer footprints in the snow each winter, until one year, there are none, and no one alive at the time even fully understands that they just witnessed an ending. Neanderthals did not vanish in a single moment of violence or failure. They faded, generation by generation, absorbed at the edges, starved at the margins, until the line between them and us blurred into something that no longer had a name of its own. And that is the part of this story that should stay with you longest. Somewhere inside you, in a strand of DNA, older than language, older than fire's first controlled spark, a piece of them is still speaking, not as a separate species anymore, as a fragment folded permanently into what you now call yourself. Maybe extinction was never truly the end of the Neanderthals. Maybe it was simply the last shape they took before becoming part of us. Like and subscribe. See you in the next.